This is Laura Caruso. She's a therapist, writer, and speaker based in New York City. She's known for, I guess, I don't really know. How would you have a book coming out in November
I do.
called The Empathy Deficit. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear a little bit about that throughout this entire show. And then you also host a podcast called Safe Space, correct?
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we followed each other, I think, about a month ago, and I love everything that you've been putting out. So I wanted to hop on here with you. There's only a few people I've really reached out to, and it has to resonate with me. And like, it has to be someone that I think I'd have dialogue that felt like it was moving conversations forward. And there are some people that like I feel are a little bit performative in these spaces, and I don't feel like you're that way. So this is cool.
I try to keep it real as much as I can.
That's great. That's great. Okay. I want to get kind of right into it, but
Cool.
so you're a therapist,
Mhm.
and I find that therapy is something that it's a part of my, I'm about to build a brand, and therapy is going to be at the center of it. It's a clothing brand that the mission is to donate funds to get people into therapy and lower the barrier to entry to therapy.
Love
And
that.
so I'm trying to speak to more therapists, one, but also like ask questions that I have myself and
Yeah.
around therapy. And one that consistently comes up for me is this thought that when people go to therapy, they believe therapy is in the room and the session is therapy, but then they don't take that and then walk outside in their life with it. And as a therapist yourself, I'd love to understand how you combat that and do you communicate that to clients? Is it something that you're like, hey, I feel like we're repeating these same patterns, like this has to be walked and talked, or like it's not actually happening? Because I think a lot of people feel like as though performing therapy is therapy, and then you go and you tell people about the session and you think that it's a realization, but you have to then go and like run that software programming to actually become that person.
Yeah. I call myself a no bullshit therapist. And so I'm definitely one to call out my clients. If we're coming back in with the same story, same patterns every single session, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to say something. So there are definitely those clients who, like you said, they show up for therapy and they think they're therapized and they're not actually translating anything outside of session. I will give clients a lot of credit. I mean, it is only a 45, 60-minute session per week, but even then, we still do carry things with us out into the world if we're not intentionally working on it. So there is an element of translation that happens, but yeah, if you're not committed to doing the work, if you're not committed to actually rewiring your patterns in your brain, you're not going to change. And that's where people get frustrated with therapy.
Yeah, I think it's great. I read that in your bio on your website that you're a no bullshit therapist. And I was
Yeah.
thinking to myself, because I have so many people that come up to me and they're like, do you want to coach? And I don't really want to coach people, but like I'm willing to, like, if someone really wants it, I'll talk to them about it. But I would be a person, I'd just be like, you're not going to like what I'm going to say to you. I'm going to force you into change. Like, I'm going to tell you that you can't do the things you're doing. And a lot of people want a friend that just listens. And I've noticed in a few of my close friends, them going like, my therapist doesn't give me advice back. And I'm like, well, how did you set this up? Do you
Right.
just like yap at them for an hour? And like, do you want someone to give you concrete or constructive criticism and like push you forward? Or do you want someone to listen to you? And I think a lot of them run into this wall of like, they want both, but when they get the constructive criticism, I think a lot of therapists are afraid that they might lose the client or the money because of the
Mm.
fact that this person might get scared of the real need to change and move into a new person.
Yeah, it's funny because I tell clients at consult that I'm a rough therapist. I'm not going to be your best friend and hold your hand. I'm going to hold your hand when we need to. And we're going to sit down and we're going to do the work and feel and be vulnerable, but we're also going to commit, right? We're going to commit to change and we're going to do the work and the hard work and the dirty work. And so I always describe myself at consult as I'm not your first therapist. If you're new to therapy, if you really just want to yap, if you want to offload and vent every week, I'm not your girl. I'm there to have a yap session when we need to have a yap session, but I want you to feel radically different 3 months after working with me. And I work with clients for like 4 or 5 years. I have some clients on my caseload still that I started with when I was an intern in grad school because they stay, because they change, they're committed to doing it. And so everyone's therapy experience is a little different. Sometimes people really do just need to yap and offload, and then that's good enough for them. But to me, that's complacency.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's what a lot of people complain about is that in the society we live in, it's a cap. It is a financially driven, all of medical stuff right now. Even mental health
Yeah.
is based off money. And like your time makes sense. Like you went to school for it. Like you should get paid for the thing because you can help people. But it's wonderful that like you've had people that come to you long term, but you're also someone that's trying to teach them not to be with you. They're with
Yes.
you, but they're also with you because life is just tough and you need reminders
Yeah.
at times. They're not with you because you're just like in the same place they've been in for 4 years.
Yeah. It's almost like a relationship that you can't get rid of. Like we'll take a break and we'll break up for a little bit and then something will happen and they'll reach out for a crisis session and then we're back in the swing of things. But not every therapist practices that way. And
Yeah.
not every therapist is as direct and confrontational, I think, as I am, especially because we're trained clinically and academically to not confront, to not bring our own biases, our own opinions into session. And I think a lot of that shifted with the pandemic. Everyone became much more relational because for the first time, pretty much ever in the mental health space, people were seeing, our clients were seeing a glimpse into our lives. They were hearing kids in the background, dogs in the background. When we first shifted online, it was chaos. It was absolute mayhem. And so clients saw a very different side of us, and we were all sitting in the trenches together during the pandemic, regardless. Obviously, some people had more privilege than others, but we were all sitting in the trenches in some form or another, especially when it comes to loneliness. And so the pandemic shifted everything. Right now, therapists are not blank slate. They're not neutral. We have opinions, and it's okay if we have opinions. And I call that the process of unlearning because I train pre licensed clinicians. I have grad students, I have pre licensed clinicians who work for me. And I'm basically deconstructing everything that they learned in academia that's 10 years behind the curve.
It's wild. When you say that, it reminds me of Terry Real, the therapist who just goes
Yeah.
at men, which is like not what you're taught as a therapist. You're supposed to go, if I'm getting this correctly, you're supposed to go at the patriarchy. You're supposed to go with the patriarchy. And he goes against it. And he pretty much says, like, as a man, like, if you're not helping or like supporting your wife, like, what are you doing? Like, you're the reason why all these things are happening. Even if you're going to work, you need to come back and be a part of the household.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. There's an article from, you would love this, from Psychology Today. This was probably like 4 years ago at this point, but it was written by a military veteran, right? So, like, the American idea of masculinity that we've been conditioned to believe. And the name of the article was The Rise in Single Men, Lonely Single Men. And he talked about the fact that women in the past decade, right, now we're in the same workforce. Now we have a lot of the same freedoms and equalities as men do. And we're still managing households. We're still handling the mental load, right? We're taking on all of the additional burdens that we typically did as caregivers and nurturers. And then also showing up for work for 60 hours a week in these crazy high paying white collar jobs. And so he wrote that it's not women, it's men, right? We're complaining that men are single and lonely and oh my gosh, there's no one for me. And women have these really high expectations. And he basically was like, so step up, right? If you don't want to step up, then don't complain about it. But you could just step up and your entire world is different.
Yeah, it's so true. A lot of the stuff that, men are claiming are like a feminism problem are really just male problems. And it reminds me of like, and this is a tougher subject to talk about, but like sexual assault and how like most men who don't think that way would not sexually assault somebody, don't believe they should be grouped. But it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. If you're willing to sit back and not act or not talk about it, you're a part of the issue. You're a part of the problem because the society just is this way. Men are stronger, men make more money. It just is how it is. We have to lead. We have to be able to say, I stand against this, even if I wouldn't do it. And I understand why I'm being grouped because I won't stand up and talk against this. And a lot of our societal issues could just be men being like, I'm willing to take on more credit for what I maybe didn't do, but I understand that I have the ability to change with my words and actions.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I wish I remember the creator's name, but I just saw this guy. He posts like frisky, scandalous kind of content, right? And all of the women are like pining over him. He's like chopping wood with an axe. Like
I know
he's
exactly what you're
real,
talking about.
you know what I'm talking about? And he addressed someone in the comments, or maybe he put a reel out about a specific comment, but one of the guys was like, if the roles were reversed, women would be freaking out. Women would be freaking out that men are commenting like all of these thirsty things. And he posted a reel and he's like, men, that is not the issue. He goes, when men are the ones who are assaulting women, primarily, we know the reverse happens. But when men are the ones who are assaulting, women aren't commenting on my post because they want to assault me. They're commenting something thirsty and funny and silly on my post because they're attracted to me and they're never going to touch me or cross my boundary. Whereas when men are doing it, right? Statistically speaking, the majority of assaults are male initiated onto females. And it's like you have to take the bigger picture in and factor in the nuance. And that's what we're losing a lot of in society is the nuance. And then we're getting upset about it because we're not looking at the whole picture.
It's such an interesting perspective. It's so true. It's so
Yeah.
true. When women are doing that, they're like, there's a sense of, even if you don't, like men could be like, you're relating it to what men are doing it, but there's a sense of joke to all of it.
Yeah.
There's a
He's
sense
like,
of
I'm
like
not scared.
satire to what they're doing. Yeah, exactly. And
Women are
there isn't
scared
that
when
with
women
men,
read those
right?
comments.
Men are like fucking whore, and like it's like, what are we? Are we? That's not the same.
I've been called a whore because I rejected someone. It's just like the female experience is so, there's no unique experiences when it comes to the female experience. We've all gone through the same shit.
Yeah, it's so true. And I feel so blessed being raised by all women because I get to understand it. And I'm not a woman, but like I can understand it in a different way than most men can. And I think that ideally will lead to helping other people.
Love that.
You said something earlier about the pandemic kind of stripping therapists down and society as a whole down a little bit. And, one thing that I really noticed about your content is that you are open to also the human experience that you're going through and you're showing that online. And I think that's really beautiful for your clients and people in general to see that like you run into the same things that your clients would run into. You're living the same experience in life and like you're going through a breakup or you're running into an avoidant partner that like makes you go, I was blinded to a few things. I didn't notice some stuff. Like I need to like work on this. And for me, if I was, wanting I want someone like almost experienced it, understands it. Whereas I feel like a lot of therapists are these like godly figures that don't experience the same thing and are speaking this like college, like learned speak to you. And I just wanted to talk on that. And is there a reason that you lean more into that? Is it because of that? Like you feel like the entire profession is a bit behind still?
I think it's just me and who I am as a person. I think it would be really hard to not show up in that way. And then when it came to like my breakup and creating content, I posted a reel and it was something along the lines of like, I have to show up online as a content creator right now because that is my job. And yet I can't even eat. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't do anything. Like I'm sitting on the couch wallowing and like smoking myself into an oblivion because I need to numb out. Like I'm a human at the end of the day. I'm a 29-year-old girl. I live in New York City. I went through a nasty breakup. Like I'm a human at the end of the day. And so the best thing I can do is show up. But I think as therapists, when we separate ourselves and we don't bring more of ourselves into our worlds or like online specifically, obviously in a client session, I'm not bringing myself and my own stuff into their stuff, right? It's strictly online that I'm showing up as authentically me. But if you're not, there's a power dynamic, right? You're trying, and I don't think it's intentional, but we're trying to position ourselves as experts and professionals in the field. And I just started coaching. I have like an older networking group that everyone's like 20 years older than me. And so they all want help with social media. And I just started coaching them. And the first thing we do is an Instagram audit. And I look at their Instagram and I say, who are you speaking to? And they say, oh, I'm speaking to like people in their 20s and 30s who are dating and in relationships. And I say, no, you're not. You're speaking to other therapists because you're using clinical language. Clients don't know clinical language. They also don't give a shit. They know words like boundaries and avoidant and attachment and things like that right now because of pop psychology. They don't give a flying fuck about the meaning behind attachment theory. And we need to normalize that. I get it. I call it like old psych versus new psych. And I'm speaking specifically about the pandemic as like the midline between that. Old psych was the armchair tweed therapist blank slate. New psych, we're dirty. We're in the trenches with them and we're normalizing that. And I've seen so much more success with my clients who I'm in the trenches with compared to my clients that I'm a blank slate.
Yeah, 100%. I come from a film school background and I did create, and I'm about to start creating again, a lot of sketch comedy. And I found that a lot of funniest things come from just improv.
Yeah.
And the least funny things come from writing because you're like
Yeah.
creating structures in which people have to then like make their own instead of them just being themselves. And it relates so much to that. Like you just get to like talk and be yourself. And like you've learned those things, but now you're just like interpreting and then giving it to people. And I think that's the best way that everybody learns is by like you inherently giving your take on this thing.
Yeah.
Because when you are taking someone else's words and just regurgitating, it doesn't come from you and you can't add the tonality or like emotion behind what actually is happening there.
Yeah. That's how I grew my account. I started my account October 2022. I was in a 3-year relationship. And then I call it, I blew up my life. I had like a whole morning birthday. It was funeral chic attire. It was so fun because I blew it all up. I blew up my 3-year relationship right before engagement. I moved out of New York City for the first time in 5 years. I moved to South America. I quit my job. Like I literally blew everything up in all of the best ways. And what does someone do in South America after they just called off basically an engagement? Process, right? So I'm like talking out loud to myself in my Airbnb. And I said, you know what? I'm going to create content around this. I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to record myself. And I called it Therapy in 60 Seconds. And I walked everyone through what was happening in my mind, the core beliefs that were coming up, the emotions that were coming up, the body sensations connected to those emotions, and then how to respond to it. And everyone ate it up.
Why are
That's
we
when I
getting
hit my
this right
first
now?
10K. I know, I really need to bring it back, but it's
Like we should be
hard.
getting
It's
you're
a
going
lot of
through a breakup
editing.
right now, aren't you? I want to hear all of this.
I know, maybe I'll bring it back. I always say that I'm gonna bring it back, but the OGs will remember it. That was, like, my most successful content. That's when I hit my first 10K, and my account just, like, blew up from that because people needed it. They, 1, needed to hear that other people were thinking and feeling and saying the same things as they were, but then they needed to know what was next, right? That was a big comment that I got on those reels of, like, "Okay, I know I'm very self-aware. I know what's happening to me, but then I don't know what to do with that information." And that was the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And also, you know, speaking to this breakup thing, it is such a powerful time of change and like rebirth and growth that it's when I mean, I got a relationship a year and a half ago now, and I started posting, you know, I was posting like fit checks before I like understood I had a voice, but I never put it online until November of last year. And I just started to realize that this was the time that I was going to either become, and it helped me by just putting myself out there and talking through it. And it's interesting because I'm now not, you know, like I think things stay with you, but I'm past that like feeling of the breakup. But when I was speaking those things really helped other people in those moments. And I wish that I still had that energy, that I still could like really resonate with it the same way because it was coming from such a truth that I could like give to people in that moment.
Yeah, it's the same way that I wrote my book. And like my book at surface level examines sociopolitical events from the last 10 years, specifically how they've divided us and polarized us and how we can bridge the divide. But I weave it with my own personal experiences. I talk about my abusive relationship. I talk about, my family and my upbringing and things like that. And that is such an important part of my story. It informs who I am and how I speak and how I carry myself today, but it also humanizes it, right? So I'm giving you really real political content and how it's impacting society and culture and actually furthering us apart than bringing us back together. But then I'm also normalizing it with my own lived experiences and saying, hey, I'm seeing that this is happening as an expert, right? I'm a therapist, I'm clinically trained to recognize these patterns, but I'm also human and I'm also experiencing it too.
Yeah, exactly. Was that abusive relationship the 3-year one that you ended before?
No, he was lovely. We just weren't a good fit. We both changed so radically in that
Yeah.
relationship. We were young. We were like basically growing up. It was early 20s. My abusive relationship was in college, and I am at so much peace with that relationship just in my own work and my own healing. And it's the only reason I became a therapist, right? I wouldn't be a therapist or a relationship therapist if it weren't for that abusive relationship. So if I had to do it all over again, I would.
That's wonderful. That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, not cool that you got abused, but you went through that and got to have like that moment of like almost arrival in college for something
For
that,
sure.
because a lot of people don't get that like, "Ah, I'd like to do this moment, even if
Mhm.
it's something that is not going to necessarily stay with you forever. They don't even have people come out of college and don't know why they're in the career they're in.
Yeah. I changed careers. I was a speech therapist first. I had a whole other master's degree. I was working in New York City in special ed for 3 years. I loved it, and then I went back to school because I knew I didn't wanna be a speech therapist for the rest of my life. And it was in that 3-year relationship that I was going back to school. And before I didn't know what I wanted to study. And he flat out was just like, why not psychology? You basically are a therapist already, the way you talk about everything and process everything. And that just unlocked something in my brain. And it was game over from then on.
I'm 1 credit away from a minor in psychology, and I just didn't
That's
do it.
amazing.
Yeah, I
Why?
mean, I just didn't have the mind to think. I was so like, get me out of this place. I didn't like
I get it.
school. I didn't function well with it. I had a
We're
learning
also so
disability. So
young when we go to school. Like
yeah,
I really wish they forced us to take a few years off and then go back to school. I think we would have a very different culture.
I've been really, really thinking about like the idea of going back to school and becoming a therapist, but it just feels like a lot at this current
Yeah,
juncture of my life. So, but it
I get
would
it.
be the only thing that I would go back to school and do. So,
Well, I'm here to chat about it because I did it and I know what it's like and I know how to do it smoothly and not in a super invasive way that completely disrupts your life.
yes, maybe we'll talk about that for sure. Okay, I have a question that I wanted to relate. I want to ask you a question that I think a lot of people go through, but in previous dynamics and in my life in general, at times I can be someone who thinks that my subjective opinion is an objective truth, and that leads to me wanting to win arguments accidentally because I believe that my opinion is true, so that I have to win it and explain to them what the truth is, which is not true. So I wonder how you deal with this with clients and what you go through, because I do think it makes a lot of people feel alienated, and it doesn't allow the person that's doing it to heal and like be a part of a team. Generally speaking, from my experience on both having it done to me and doing it to people, it makes it feel like you're just being like, there's no way of existing other than this, and then you maybe get into a relationship with that person. And then I have another question after that kind of relates to that, but I'd love to hear your response and perspective.
Can we therapize in real time? Can I ask you the question I ask all my clients? What's the fear?
Yeah, it's probably a fear. Yeah, I agree. It's probably
Oh,
just a
it's
fear
always a
that,
fear.
yeah,
But what is
there's
the
probably
fear?
a fear of almost that the future them could be an issue to me, and like, right, like I need to correct this behavior now before it becomes a relation, right?
So what is that underpinning? I know it. Do you know it?
I don't know. I
If
could
you're
think
trying to
about it for a
correct it
second.
ahead of time, you're trying to proactively, yeah, you just need to learn how to let go. It
Yeah.
has actually nothing to do with being right. It's
Hmm.
all about control and the fear of losing control or the fear of feeling out of control. And that probably unlocks something within you right now because I'm sure there's something deep down from childhood that you've carried with you all these years. And you're like, yeah, that's connected to that.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that's coming up for me is this idea that I was always put in situations where I was unsafe. And so
Yeah.
therefore I had to almost protect myself or my siblings proactively, because it was 7 of us. I was one of 7. I'm
Wow.
the only stepchild, but like we all have and I have no full siblings. So it's a mishmash of family, but there were so many of us. It was hard to keep track of everybody. And like Disneyland, someone would trail off and I'd be the one to grab, bring them back in. So I was like constantly in this anxious mode of like protecting myself and my siblings. And so maybe there's probably other things that draw into that. But the other thing that I wanted to mention on that subject is I feel like a lot of people get into relationships with people that need them to be specific ways in order to feel safe. I don't know that that allows human beings to be themselves, right? Because if you know that you're getting into something with somebody that needs control and needs you to be a specific way, then how are you able to be yourself? And when you feel that instinct to be yourself, you draw back because that person needs you to stay that way.
It's tough because I think that pattern is very much connected to maturity. I think as we get older and we settle more into ourselves and our own identities and ways of being, we start to realize that we're not going to let anyone else control or change us. And then by proxy, we almost kind of do the same for other people. And I
Right.
think, I look at relationships as corrective experiences, and that's for better or for worse. There's definitely relationships that mess us up a little bit more, but the corrective experience ones, like the healthy relationships, right? They teach us new dynamics and new ways of being, and we can't know what we don't know. So if we were never in a healthy relationship, we don't know what that dynamic is like, right? I had no good relational models growing up. My parents now have a great marriage because I'm a therapist and they had no choice but to heal and do the work. But they were not like that up until a few years ago. As horribly as my ex ended the relationship, I do give him so much credit because he raised my standards so much in relationships. And up until literally the moment that we broke up, maybe a few hours before we broke up, he treated me like royalty.
So I guess you said your relationship is a big part of your existence and sphere right now. I also was discarded and was with an avoidant person. And there were things that I noticed, but I ignored at times. And I don't know if you feel that way because you said that he was a wonderful partner and he raised your standards, but were there things within the dynamic that you noticed and then in retrospect went, wow, I really missed certain things? Or was that not the case?
Very small elements of that. There were other relationships where I looked back and I'm like, wow, this is glaring. And I didn't even notice it in real time. But for this relationship, it was more like maybe frustration, like maybe just like a undertone of annoyance and frustration. And now I understand that and see that if he wasn't fully invested in the relationship, but was still showing up as a good partner because he came from a good home and that's what he learned to do because he watched it in his parents, he didn't really know what he was doing, right? He didn't know that it was controversial to treat me like royalty and really great, and then also kind of withdraw in the relationship at the same time. So it was a tough dynamic. I can't say like fully looking back, yeah, I saw the signs. I definitely didn't see the signs. And I don't think that there were very many. I think there were few, if any. I think they were normal things in a relationship, right? We often get frustrated with our partners. If we're overstimulated or stressed, of course, we're going to be frustrated with our partners.
It must be, and I don't want to speak for you, but it must be even potentially more destabilizing because you're like, this both had all of the great elements and it just like evaporated.
I had this deep rooted fear after the breakup, and it's still kind of there that I will never trust a man again. And it's hard to work through that mentally because when you're experiencing it in real time, I mean, I'm sure you know that feeling of not being able to trust someone. You're afraid that that feeling is going to stick around forever and it's never going to go away. And my mom kept telling me, she's like, Laura, you know it's going to go away, right? You know that you're going to trust, you know you're going to open your heart again. And even if you don't, you'll still be okay. And that for me, the reminder of I'm still going to be okay was my anchor. And I think that shifted the way that I'm dating now because I am dating again, but it's lighter, it's casual, it's more fun. Yeah, I want to meet my husband and I want to settle down and have the life that I always envisioned, but I'm not fixated on it anymore. And I was always fixated on it. But this relationship and this breakup cracked me wide open. And I had no choice but to let go of control. Because unless I feel that someone is so fully in it and invested and showing up and doing the work in the ways that I do in a relationship, they're not my person. And I have to walk away from that.
I completely agree with that. You you mentioned you've said it in places, and maybe this will come out after that, but you're moving. That's the
I'm
thought, right?
moving.
You're moving.
I know I'm giving like little bits and pieces everywhere. I'm moving, I think, to Colorado. I've never been to Colorado. I'm going for the month of October to test it out. I'm staying for a whole month and to really get a feel for what it's like. This would not be the first time that I've moved somewhere without ever having been there. This will actually be a unique experience for me now that I'm testing it out before I get there. Um, but yeah, it's time for me to leave New York City.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoy being in New York. I don't think I could ever live in New York, so I get it.
Yeah,
It's a energy. Like LA is the same in different ways, right? But the energy here can really pull from you. And
yeah,
people go, what do you mean energy? It's like it just you feel caught up in it. There's no I'm looking out. I can look into someone else's apartment right now. There's no
yeah.
space for me to be
Same.
alone. And that energy is like I'm constantly around just people and they live their own
Yeah.
lives and pull different things into different areas. And so I completely agree. And Colorado is beautiful. It's
I'm
really
so
gorgeous.
excited.
Yeah. Where are
I'm
you going in
so
Colorado? Do you
excited.
know?
I'm going to stay in Denver for the month, but I'm trying to bop around. So we'll see. I long term want to live somewhere so remote in nature and just like not off the grid completely because I need plumbing and things like that. But I just want to live at peace and calm and soft every single day and not like charged energetically. I'm tired of that. My nervous system can't handle it anymore. It's just, and it's not that I don't have the capacity to handle it. I just don't want to anymore. I want to be regulated. I want to be soft. I want to be all of the warm and inviting qualities that I love most about myself. And New York and any city hardens you.
100%. You're speaking my language. I don't know. I think we followed each other after I'd taken my 5-month spell in Woodside, California, above Palo Alto. Um,
Amazing.
yeah. The reason I went there was amazing, but the time that I had there was amazing. I had a fire at my apartment in January, and so
Oh
it
gosh.
wasn't in my place, but it was my neighbor's place, and it like essentially evicted me from my unit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I went up to the Bay Area for a bit where I'm from, and I just was like, love LA, but I need it, like long term. My goal is to have a place in both like a major city and outside.
That's me too. I don't think I could give up the city completely. I'm always going to be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I've left New York before. I've lived in South America for 4 month periods, 2 years in a row.
Where
My
was
stuff is
that?
always in storage. The first was 2022. I went out in December and I came back in March. And then the next one, that was my solo trip. That was after the breakup, my like eat, pray, love kind of moment. And then the year after that, I was in another shorter relationship and we traveled together. But I had to move out of my apartment too because I had stuff happen with like leaks and there was record breaking rains. It was insane and mold grew. So I just packed my stuff up, put it in storage, and then went to South America for the winter again, pretty much on the same timeline. And that was 2024. Yeah, 2024.
Where did you go both times?
The first time I did Peru, Chile, and Argentina. The second time I did Peru again, so Cusco, Lima, and then Moncura, went further up north, and then Argentina, Buenos Aires. And I was supposed to be there for a month, and I ended up hopping on a last minute boat to Antarctica and went to Antarctica and then came back
That's
and spent 2 weeks in Buenos Aires.
That's awesome. You know, in my
Yeah.
research for this, I like stumbled upon, as you know, you look at someone's profile, they'll start to suggest videos that they've commented on, and you help someone, you translated Spanish for somebody on a video, and I was like, she must speak Spanish, and this is why you speak Spanish.
That's so crazy that you saw that. I don't even know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
I do speak Spanish.
On Uncle Bob, that guy who does, and you like translated the
Oh,
lady what the
I
like
love
the
him. I love
vernacular
him
spelling
so
of
much.
what bow, but yeah, and it's
Yeah,
not really vernacular, but you know, yeah, he's amazing.
that's
He's a
so
great
funny.
character. Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. And his niece is just chef's kiss. She's so cute.
Yeah, he's wonderful. It's so funny because he kind of plays on this like in between of like he like will post videos with like gay dudes sometimes, and like they're like, is he gay? Is he for us? Like
Yeah,
a lot of these
he's
men
like
love.
queer baiting,
Yeah, it really is kind of like queer baiting a bit, but
but
women
in like a
eat
playful
it
way.
up. Exactly.
Yeah,
He's not doing anything like sexually with this stuff. He's just like having drinks sometimes with friends that seem to be gay.
yeah,
It's very funny.
he's
Okay.
awesome.
I have some more. I want to refer back to my notes real quick.
I can't believe you saw that comment. That's so funny.
Yeah. I was like, is she Spanish? Is that where she is? Her
No, I'm
parents?
very white. I'm Italian.
She is. I have friends that look very white and they're like, they're Spanish. So
No. I do speak Peruvian Spanish now, though, because I've spent so much time in Peru. I used to speak Mexican Spanish because that's what we were taught in school growing up.
Mhm.
And now it's like my slang and everything is Peruvian.
It's very specific too. Are there a lot of parts of the language that you have to like change?
Yeah. So my first year there, I was like so excited because my Spanish was rusty when I got there the first year. And I got to Peru and it was so easy because Peruvian Spanish is so like textbook aside from the slang, but the slang is pretty easy to pick up on. Grammar and everything is exactly the same. Pronunciation is exactly the same. And then you get to Chile and you're like, what the hell are you guys saying? And like this is very big in like the Latino culture as well. Everyone kind of shits on Chileans, unfortunately, because they speak a Spanish that nobody understands. And they have a different word or four different words for every single thing. So you can't understand it. Most like native Spanish speaking people can't understand Chilean Spanish if they don't know it. And then you get to Argentina and you're like, okay, now I'm finally getting a grasp on Chilean Spanish. I've been here for a month and a half. Now I go to Argentina. And Argentinian Spanish is completely different too, because they pronounce everything differently. So instead of como se llama, it's como se llama. And then you hear that for the first time and you're like, what are they saying? And then you pick it up and then you go to another country and you start all over again. So I got really great at speaking Spanish that first year because I had no choice but to learn the four different types of Spanish.
So the Chileans made you illiterate and the Argentinians
Yeah.
made it worse.
I don't think I ever actually learned Chilean Spanish. I could never speak it, but I could understand it.
That's so funny. And that's all you really need, right? Because then you
Yeah.
can use the base of the language and then like
Yeah.
figure it out,
And
kind of.
they don't wanna help you either.
Yeah,
Peru, they'll help you. They wanna help you. They want you to understand. They want to learn your language. They want you to learn their language. Chile, they don't care. If they see that you speak English, they will switch to English because they don't wanna speak to you in Spanish. It's
that's
funny.
so
The
funny.
dynamics are just so it's so different across countries, and it's fascinating to see that kind of culture just, like, shift, whereas in the US, right, it's one country, but it's massive. And, yeah, we have different, like, subcultures within the US, but it's interesting to see similar cultures present so differently at the same time.
But yeah, because even I guess the most, I guess illiterate's a bad way of saying it, but the hardest people to understand it maybe like Creole or like from New
Yeah.
Orleans, like that is the deepest twang to an American dialect we have, but English dialect, American, I'm saying American because that's the way that I would say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in other countries, you figure they all if they speak the same, but it is a different country. I guess the U.S. is one space. So
Yeah. I asked one of my Aussie friends lately or recently, what accent do you think, like, what is an American accent to you? And she said, like, a Southern accent. Like, hey, y'all. Like, that's her version of American English. I was like, wow, that is fascinating to me because I have never spoken that way in my entire life.
it's the most recognizable, probably.
Yeah.
That's why, like, it has like it. Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense. That's interesting. Okay, I have a question. So I've been thinking a lot about how religion and spirituality tie into therapy and working through things. Like, do you use them in, and do you recommend that people? Do you recommend spiritual books? Is it something that you do? What is your relationship to it, and how do you tie it in if you do?
I think the older I get, the more I understand religion. And I was raised Catholic and I never believed in God or anything growing up. And as an adult, I started seeing and experiencing things that you just don't have an explanation for. And even down to like when I first started my career, I was featured in like Cosmopolitan, HuffPost, like all of these big media publications, and I was a nobody online, but they were just reaching out to me, right? They were seeking me out. I wasn't seeking them out. Same thing, I did a partnership with Paired and I created a lot of in-app content for them and they sought me out before I even had a big following, right? It's like all of these things come to me because energetically on a whole soul level, I believe that it's meant for me. And there's no other explanation of like it's an energy transfer, right? And I've experienced that my entire life to the point that I made a lot of really risky decisions in my life in many different areas of life. And I would always say, my best friend, my childhood best friend of like 15 years, Eric, he would always say to me, like, how do you know that it's going to work? I'm like, because it is. There is no other option for it to not work. And I've like moved, like I quit my job in Italy. And then when I lived in Italy for 6 months as well, I quit my job and I was like, I'm just going to travel. And he goes, how are you going to make money? And I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to figure it out. When I need to make money, I'm going to make money. And I did. And if you believe that there's a will, there is a way. And it doesn't mean you stop doing the work and stop putting in the effort. I think that's where people fall back and question spirituality and things like that. They're like, well, I'm praying for this. I'm hoping it will happen. Why isn't it happening? And then they're not actually doing anything in the meantime to get there at the same time. It's like the energy will reward you if you are also doing the work at the same time. And in terms of spirituality with clients, I don't particularly bring that into my work with clients. If the clients bring it into our sessions, I will for sure back it up and talk about it and maybe dive a little bit deeper into my own experiences and relationships with it. But I have clients who like pull tarot cards, who go see psychics, who are super into it. And then I have other clients who are just they want nothing to do with it. And it's kind of the same as like dealing with friends. If there are some friends I talk to about this, and then some friends are like, I don't care. I don't give a shit. So
Yeah.
I think it's no different.
Yeah, completely agree. To your point of I'll figure it out. I've always kind of been that way, but at times I lack, even though I have the hard work behind it, I lack the belief that I will
Mm,
like make the money or figure the thing out. And something I'm processing and figuring out right now as I get into this phase of like building a business and having to be seen. So I have to crack myself open and just get it out there. And I've been doing it with social media and it's been helping a lot. I completely agree. Like your mindset is that I will figure it out and I will do the thing and I will make the money. which means
Yeah.
that you'll do whatever it takes to do that. So you take the job that comes up that some people have egos around, and so yeah, a lot of people will say, I'm gonna figure it out, but then the thing comes and they're like, they haven't been practicing the thought process of like, I'm just gonna do it. This is gonna figure itself out, and then like actioning it and like pushing it forward and like going and if you're in Italy and you get a cafe, you get a cafe job from whatever it is, and just like making sure you're moving yourself forward because that leads to more things over time. It's something that
Yeah.
I've really not been good at, is having an ego around, at times having an ego around, like just like putting my ego aside and just like doing the thing and making sure I'm moving forward.
Yeah. Ego and fear, so interconnected, the two of them. That's what holds everyone back, right? A client, similar position. She wants to start a brand. She's super into fashion, wants to be a designer. And she was saying, I don't think I could work on the design team at this retail job that I just took because I don't have experience. And I go, so Star, how do you think you get the experience? And she's like, well, but I'm scared to reach out. And I go, okay, do it anyways. Feel the fear, do it anyways. That's what we're supposed to do. And I've been with this client for years, so I can talk to her like this, but and I'm not always like this. We do the hand holding and everything that we need to do. But that session, I was like, this is not going to be a warm and fuzzy session. If you want this, I'm going to make sure that you get that. If you don't want it, tell me, then we'll pull back. But the fear is what blocks everyone so much. And I had never heard that phrase, feel the fear, but do it anyways. I think an author wrote it in one of their books. When I was in Antarctica, I met this lovely girl, Kat. She was incredible. Was fresh into a divorce. Her life was just kind of imploding, unfortunately. And she was so anxious. She's a chronically anxious person her entire life. And here she is in Antarctica with her best friend, jumping into the Southern Ocean. And the entire trip said, feel the fear, but do it anyways. And that just like rewired my brain, hearing that and then seeing her do that. We're going to be scared, but we have to do it anyways. And people say that about me. Like, I'm another big announcement that I haven't announced publicly yet, but I'm going to be doing a TED speech or TED talk. And I just wrote the speech with a coach. And the name of the speech is The Courage to Begin Again. And it's all about starting over. It's a very big driver in me moving to Colorado and leaving New York City at 30. And the whole premise of the talk is that I had all of these life experiences, but people look at me and say, like, this girl has lived in other countries. This girl has lived on 3 continents. She has this business and is thriving and doing all of these things. And I say, yeah, but I cried on the plane when I was on my way there. I literally, the first line of my speech for the TED Talk is raise your hand if you feel more scared, if you feel scared more often than not. And then I'm going to say, me too. I'm terrified right now. You're standing on a stage, there's lights on you. You're pouring sweat from every single pore of your body. I'm scared, but I'm human and I'm going to do it anyways because I'm not going to let the fear hold me back.
What comes up for me when you say that is I have this thought that I need to constantly ask people that have done it before me, like instead of just like, going, like I've asked a
Yeah.
ton of people. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
I'd love to be a co-founder. Like, can I do this with you? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
these people think it's awesome. I need to ask more people if they think it's good. I'm like, just do the thing,
No.
dude. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. When you get too many opinions, none of it matters anymore because now you're
No.
just hearing everyone else's voice instead of your own.
And it's the idea of like realizing the thing without actually creating it. I'm like
Yeah.
telling them what's going to happen and they're like, that's great. And I'm like, great, let me find another person to say it's great. It's like, just do the thing. And I think it's so cool that like when you've said the name of the speech, I was like, you don't even need to say the speech anymore. I'm sold on the idea of the courage to begin again.
I'm
It's just so
stoked.
good.
I'm stoked. I have a slideshow of like pictures of my life and like me living in South America with a golden retriever, right? That was another crazy thing I did when I moved. I brought Lola with me and like you just have to do it because you're never going to have the experiences that you want to have or the life that you want to have. And my biggest thing, maybe it is a little bit part of me at my core. And I recognize that not everyone feels this way. But from such a young age, I knew I was meant for something bigger, right? I came from a really small town in New Jersey and people don't leave that town. And it was just not for me. It was never for me. And I felt that way my entire life, almost as if it was like a visceral rejection of my reality. And I created this life that was bigger and better because I knew I was meant for that. And so maybe I manifested it in a little bit and maybe I had a little bit of audacity to go after these things. But what's the other option? I live with regret and I look back in my small town where I'm married in an unhappy and loveless marriage. Abso-freaking-lutely not.
I'm sure we both know people that are doing that currently.
Many. Many.
What comes up for me when you say this stuff is following you. I wish I know that maybe you've definitely talked about this in the past, but like, I wish as someone who's recently followed you, could see this. Like, I'd love to see that journey on like some of your I'd love to see it. Like, that's
We'll
something that
chat.
yeah.
We'll chat. I'm an
Yeah, yeah.
open book.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really cool to see how many places you live. Like you were just talking about Italy, like you guys took a 6 month hiatus there. Like it sounds like you're living the life.
That was so I have a big habit of fleeing the country after a breakup, and I'm pretty consistent with it to the point that my therapist now doesn't challenge me on it anymore. So this breakup, when I said I was leaving New York, she goes, I'm not going to say anything because you always leave and you come back so much better and bigger and better than you were before. And Italy was right after my abusive relationship. I moved a few months after the abusive relationship. And so I actually don't remember most of my experience in Italy because I was just so numbed out and like not processing and completely dissociated. But I had to do it. It's like putting myself in a new environment. One, I think distracts me in a way that I need to be distracted from a huge trauma and a huge grief. And it also gives me new experiences and expands me at the same time. Eventually, when my nervous system is ready to process, I will. And South America was a little bit different because I willingly participated in that relationship, the abusive relationship. I obviously was in the relationship, but I wasn't necessarily a willing participant. And it's just different. So I was processing more in South America than I was in Italy, but it's my way of coping, right? I have to flee a little bit.
Yeah, something that I'm wondering about like myself is musicians will like need the fuel of like heartbreak to create beautiful art. I noticed myself getting into a pattern of like needing refresh or like, and I wonder, do you feel like your body's become accustomed to the pattern of breakup, renew?
Yes and no. I think it's become accustomed to renewing and
Uh-huh.
expanding, not necessarily the breakup. I think the breakup is a catalyst sometimes, like my major relationships, I have left the country, but I'm always reinventing myself and I'm always, becoming a different version of me. If I look back at my life every year, every 2 years, I am so radically different. And there's elements of similarity, right? I'm
Mhm.
obviously the same person, but I'm evolved and I'm a more complex and evolved version of the person that I was before. And I talk about that a lot recently. I don't know if I've posted the content yet or if it's scheduled, but talking about how I'm never going to get the version of me back that I was in that relationship with my most recent ex. And that was really hard for me because I loved her. I absolutely loved her. And I think that helped me fall deeper into the relationship. I was so madly in love. And I don't know if it was because I was madly in love with him or because I was in love with who I was in that relationship or a combination of both. But the fun part when you learn to flirt with it and play with it is you experience these hardships and these changes, but you get to reinvent yourself along the way, right? After that breakup, when I came out of the fog and was no longer like sitting on the floor in despair, I realized there's so much potential, right? There's so much opportunity and beauty within this chapter, even if it sucks. And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck. They sit in the suck and they don't ever propel themselves forward. And I think that's
Right.
where that inherent habit of mine helps me.
100%. I agree with that completely. Is a lot of people will take the heartbreak as like a reason they're flawed or they
Yeah.
need to avoid that type of person in the future instead of it's like a catalyst moment of change and movement. And when you're talking about that, I was just like completely like it makes complete sense. Like if you're have a growth mindset, you're not mad at yourself. You're just moving in the direction of growth and you're going to keep the parts of you that feel wonderful and should stay. And then you're going to transform and, move into the version of you that you need to be in the future.
Yeah. And we need the balance, right? We need to sit
Yes.
in the suck, but we also need to kind of push ourselves forward. And that's why I'm not a first therapist for people because a lot of people, when they first come to therapy, want to sit in the suck. And I can only sit in the suck for so long. Eventually, we have to make some change.
Is that something you say to you? You're like, if you like are clear that like I'm not your first therapist, and if you want
Yeah.
me to be your first therapist, you have to understand what I'm about to give you.
Yeah. It's literally written into my like consultation question template. I say it to every therapist.
That's really
But it's
great.
also part of my personality, right? I'm a stubborn Italian girl from Jersey. I was raised in a chaotic household. Like, I'm not for everyone, and I get that. And yes, I've settled down and I've learned to soften and like lean into those calmer and warmer qualities of myself. But you're not going to lose the crazy at the same time, right? And it comes out in healthier, more fun ways. But like, I'm always going to be spontaneous. I'm always going to fuck off to another country and stay there for 3 months. Like that is always going to be a part of who I am.
Yeah. On that point of being a part of a wild household and being a girl from Jersey, confrontation and avoidance is a form of confrontation, I think. And what being someone, I'm very confrontational in a more healthy way than I ever have been in my entire life. And I find that I'm not, barking at people anymore, but I still want to have the conversation and not sit in the gap of nothingness until they're ready to talk about it. And I get that people need space, but I just wonder what as someone that sounds like you're more on the front foot. You don't want to be, you're not sitting in that limbo. I've been really thinking about this a lot. Like, how do you break that gap down from like someone that is like almost reactional to someone that has the confrontation while being a healthy communicator?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. How do I break down the
Like if
difference
like
between?
I'm if I'm I was reactive for a long time. If I'm like
Okay.
just reacting and like I need the confrontation, but it's a powerful confrontation instead of and finding that like middle ground between like healthy confrontation and the
Yeah.
reactive confrontation.
Yeah, and still being human. The apology, right? That's literally the bridge between the 2, right? We're gonna fly off the cusp or off the cuff sometimes, like, we are humans, we break down. If I'm overstimulated, if it's, like, hot inside after I walk in with a heavy coat, it's donezo. It's game over for me. I need at least 5 minutes to regulate, right? I need to go sit on the couch and, like, stare at the wall for a few minutes, and then I can be a normal human. But in those moments when I'm flustered and overwhelmed, I'm gonna snap, and it's not perfect, and I'm a therapist, but I'm also a human. And
Right.
so I think therapists, especially, we hold ourselves to this really high standard of like, I should know better. No, when we experience our own emotion, first of all, we have blinders on because we're blinded by our own emotions. So we're going to act as we do. And that's when we fall back into pattern. And so if you came from a chaotic household, you're going to be chaotic. And the bridge between healthy confrontation and then unhealthy confrontation is repair and apologies. Can you take ownership of when you shouldn't have snapped, right? When you were overstimulated and say, hey, it wasn't about you, it was about me, and I really messed up. And we need that in relationships. You're never going to not have conflict in relationships because you have 2 humans who are trying to coexist and do a shared life together. That's hard. It's really hard to do.
Yeah, there is that, I've talked about it in the past, and I'm sure you've heard people talk about this, but like the beginning of something and people really wanting to avoid confrontation and the inevitable confrontation, there's that space in between that where like people can draw in that like avoidance of confrontation into the relationship. And then you never like when the first one happens, it's like this like really bad moment where like they both are afraid that it might not go past that. And yeah, it's something that I've talked to friends about ad nauseum because a lot of them avoid confrontation until it's like too late at times.
Yeah. I think avoidance is so selfish. Even when you're just thinking about attachment, like the anxious attachers want to connect. The anxious
Mhm.
attachers want to figure it out and solve it. And yeah, I'm roping myself in with those anxious attachment people. We're insane sometimes and like need a lot more reassurance and things than the average person. That's not right in a relationship, but we are human. Whereas avoidant attachment people, like they just kind of dip out from their relationships. And that is so selfish. It's fine if you need space. It's fine if you need extra time to process, but you need to take ownership of that and have accountability. It's the same thing for neurodivergence. If you have ADHD, if you have autism, okay, I would love for us not to live in an ableist society that's catered to the neurotypical, fine, but we do. That's our reality. And so we have to take ownership of that. I had a business partner who we lasted a year in business together as a group practice. And the constant thing was if he forgot something, he would say, like, oh, sorry, I have ADHD. I'm like, I don't care. I care that you have ADHD and I care that it's hard for you. So let's talk about that and create systems, but you still need to get your shit done. And it's no different in a relationship and in avoidant attachments.
You know, do you think that avoidant attack they've thought those thoughts. They're just
Oh yeah.
avoiding them, right? Like
Yeah. They
it's
ignore
been
them.
festering for months and
Yeah.
they're choosing not to engage in them and then they're acting this different way, which is a lie, right?
Yes. Yeah. The thing that my ex said to me as we were breaking up in that conversation, I have no idea what's happening in this conversation.
Like it's a
And he
great day today.
literally he woke up in my childhood bed. We were visiting my family, like we went and got brunch with our friends. Like it was a great
But
day.
generally it's
Sunny.
those moments that freak them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think he got scared. I think he got really scared being home. That was the first time he went to my hometown. Like, I think he got really scared. And he had said to me in that conversation when we were breaking up, he's like, I think you're going to look back and you're going to see all of the holes in the relationship. And I 4 months out, still look back every day. And I'm like, nope, there was nothing. These were all, I don't want to say stories because they were real, but it was the story about the relationship that he was telling himself in his head that created his reality. And yeah, I'm sure it was based on our mutual relationship, but I was never a part of that story. And that's where people go wrong in relationships is we just assume that like our partner is in our head. And then we try to make sense of it all. And we're like, well, why aren't you understanding me? Well, why? Like, because we never communicated that. We avoided the communication when we could have just said it. That's it.
As a man who can live a lot of relationships in his head at times, I'm like really coming to terms with the idea that like if I'm masturbating, watching porn, things like that are really affect how I think about the people that I'm engaging with. And it's
Interesting.
so accidental and so
Yeah.
autopilot that once I realized, I was like, holy shit, I am
Yeah.
creating the problems. Even if there is an issue here, I can't see it for what it is because I'm clouding it with all this other shit.
Yeah. We have to cut the noise more often than not.
Yeah. It's really, really wild. Okay, I want to hear about your book. I know you talked about it a little bit, but I'd love for you to just, yap about your book. I
Yeah.
want to hear about it.
I met with my publisher today to talk about the cover design, and it, I think, for the first time feels real, despite having finished writing the book and editing the book. It's called The Empathy Deficit. It talks about how small acts of care can restore, a polarized society and how we can bridge the gap and reconnect. And it talks about my own life experiences. It talks about my abusive relationship. It follows characters, right? It's a nonfiction book, but the characters' names are obviously changed for privacy. But it follows real people in my life who've had a huge impact on me, for better or for worse. And each character represents a different theme. And so I start, I think, with openness is the first one. And presence is another one. I talked a lot about my experience in Antarctica and this one really amazing expedition leader that we had who would just ground us and anchor us into the moment. And it talks about how these huge people in my life who have no idea that they were so big in my life, I'm excited because I'm going to send them all a copy of the book and like write a note to them specifically, everyone who's like featured in the book. And I think if we just slow down a little bit and really listen and really participate in our relationships and in our environments, we would live a very different life. And we would live a different life individually and socially as a community and a collective. And we live in a self serving society, right? We're taught to be independent. We're taught from a really young age to be successful and strive for the best. And it's only you. Don't look, you can't rely on other people. You only have yourself to rely on. And that has furthered us in the divide, right? It's just made us more disconnected. It's made us lonelier. It's made us more upset and angry about the world. And really all we need is connection. And connection happens through slowing down, right? And learning to be present.
I was talking to a friend yesterday and she was saying that, and she related to socialism, but like we are stronger as a group
Yeah.
financially, as a group
Yeah.
group of friends can afford much more together. Family, two partners can. It's just how it works, and we've been
Yeah.
taught forever via capitalism that we need to strive on our own and build more of a society that has businesses that you built. And yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. That sounds wonderful. And also it answers my question of where can I hear these stories of like your past experiences?
Yeah, it's honestly like I know I'm biased because I wrote it, but reading it back as we were editing, it's a good book. It's a really good book, and I'm really excited for people to read it. I'm excited for the people in my life to read it and to see that they've had such an impact on me. Writing my acknowledgments, that was like one of the most insane things that I've ever done in my life because you're shouting out all of the people who've gotten you to where you are today. And most of these people don't know. And I hope the book is out before it will be out before my mom's not going to listen to this. I actually don't care. My parents are really upset because they think they're not going to be in the book because I've sent them chapters and they were spiteful Italians. They're like, you probably didn't even acknowledge us in the acknowledgement. Meanwhile, I dedicated the entire book to them. So when you open it up, the first page talks about, it says to my parents, and I don't remember the exact language anymore, but it was basically saying that they're proof that relationships can change and people can change. And I'm so grateful for the change in our relationship as a family. And I'm excited for them to see that.
Because you talked about how, I mean, earlier in this episode that they literally have just kind of transformed their dynamic with
Yeah.
you.
I came back, well, I started tolerating a lot less as I became a therapist, and so there were firmer boundaries, but when I came back from South America, I call it part 1, part 2. South America part 1, my solo trip. Before I moved back to the city, I stayed home for a few months, and I was working from home, like, I was living my adult life just in my parents' house, and a few months after that, I went out to dinner with my parents. I was already living back in the city, and we went out to dinner, and my dad turned to me and said, "You know, you being home for those few months really changed our marriage." And I just looked at him speechless, and I had nothing to say to that. And he just continued and he said, I saw the way you just set your boundaries with your mother and like wouldn't entertain her when she was going chaotic. And you would say, you know, I want to talk to you about this, but I need you to go regulate and do what you need to do and come back and then talk to me like an adult, like a human. And he said he started doing that in the marriage and they have a radically different marriage for it. And I'm closer with my parents now more than ever. I call them on the phone. My father is like so archaic. He didn't have a cell phone until 2 years ago, and it was for safety reasons and had no desire to learn how to text. He'll email me in like all caps. It's insane. And we got in a fight at Christmas last year at the table, and a few glasses of wine were had before we got in this little spat. And I said to him, "Do you think your grandchildren are ever going to pick up the phone and call you?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "They're not. And not because they don't want to talk to you, but because society is changing so rapidly. Nobody's going to be talking on the phone 15, 20 years from now. You need to learn how to text." A month later, I got a text from my dad and said, "This is a test run." And it's interesting to see people who are so much older than me and so ingrained in their ways start to shift. And it's just proof that, you know, we're not fixated, we're not fixed humans. We can grow and evolve. And if we don't, we're just avoiding it.
So powerful you say that because my mom has just started to, she's going to take a course on Instagram and texting with my
I
stepfather.
love that.
It started because she's always dated and married pretty intense men who are not very nice. And she dated someone who's has the same very masculine energy, but he is willing to change at 60 and work on himself and he's spiritual. And so my relationship with him at the beginning was head on and I started to soften and accept him for who he was. And then his relationship with me changed and then my relationship with her was able to change. And as you were leading, I was able to lead these people that like learned a certain way into a different realm of existence and life. And I don't think, and I don't mean to be like, I did it, but like, I don't think they would have been able to see that without like someone they loved, like coming to them from a place of like care and gratitude and going like, I love you. Let's change this.
Yeah. Relationships are mirrors, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes we hold the mirror up. And I think I literally wrote this in my book. We can choose to look in the mirror and take a hard, long look at ourselves, or we can smash that mirror and pretend like it doesn't exist. And ultimately, this even goes back to my book too. All we want is connection. That's it. And as soon as we get connection, we're happy. We're happy, but we don't know how to get there because we didn't have the information. Right now, there's no excuse to be insane in this season of life. We have literally free therapy online. You can tap into any single thing that you need to rewire your brain for free. Before the internet, before, you know, social media and all of these things became readily accessible, I get it. There are financial barriers. Therapy had a huge stigma. People weren't going to therapy, weren't talking about therapy. Now there's no excuse.
That's kind of the thing that we were just talking about is like they grew up in a society that didn't have it and now they're using the excuse of not having it, but it's there. And
Yeah,
you're saying you
it's
either
there now.
learn it or you don't. It's your
Yeah,
choice to not be a part of this new version of existence. And it
yeah,
sounds like both of our families are deciding to lean into it. But that is what so many of my friends run into with their parents is this idea of like, what do you mean? I just heard someone say something that changed my life on the internet, on TikTok. Like you could
yeah.
do this.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
client who has a really tough mother and a really tough relationship. And when I broke it down to your mom is just trying to connect with you, that like opened her entire world. She said, "Oh my God, I never realized that." And as soon as she realized that her mom was just trying to connect with her, but was being crazy in the process, she was able to set boundaries and say, "This is what is and is not acceptable within our relationship." And those boundaries helped mom learn how to connect with her. And now they have a really great and rewarding relationship. And she can also detach and decenter herself a little bit in that relationship. When mom does go back into old habits, she can take a step back and say, Mom is just trying to connect and she doesn't know how to do that. So, what can I do differently in this moment so that we can connect and we can get what we want?
And I think a lot of the fear for people in those moments when you set boundaries is that you'll lose the dynamic. But if people love you and they want to be around you, they're going to figure out how to be a part of that and change in whatever capacity they need to. I'm
Yeah,
learning that myself. It's tough.
stuff.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have kids so selfishly for completely selfish reasons because I can't wait to teach people this, right? Like, I can't wait to watch little humans grow up with this framework from such a young age.
Living with my goddaughter Max, and
No,
I'm like, your parents are amazing, but there's some like emotional regulation that I just as like they call me she calls me her uncle, like I'm able to like sit with her and be like, yo, we don't need to right now. We just decided we're gonna be calm about this. Why are we whining? We don't need to do
I
that. We can just
love that's
chill right now.
exactly how I sound.
Yeah.
Like, we were just doing this. Why are we doing this now?
You don't want to put your shirt on, so you just want to be annoyed right now. Like you're frustrated about something you can do in 2 seconds. You got this. Come on, put it on. And she
Yeah.
goes and puts her skirt on. She's like,
Yeah. When I worked in special ed and kids would like throw themselves out of chairs, granted it was a higher level school, but it was like language delay, executive function, ADHD, right? So lower elementary school, kids who don't have the tools yet to regulate, they would like throw themselves on the floor and I would look at them and be like, what are you doing? And you just stop them in your tracks and they're like, what am I doing? Why am I on the floor right now? And you just make them think about how they impulsively reacted to what was happening in their body and their mind. And when they when they shift their perspective, they're able to choose differently. And then you're able to normalize, throwing yourself on the floor because you broke your pencil it doesn't really match what happened,
you're
right? I would always,
mirroring them too.
yeah,
You're like
yeah,
you're like, whoa, that was. But like parents and people that are caught in the cycle at times will just be like, what are you doing? Why are we? And like it's just feeding back into the like
yeah,
they're getting attention for this thing. Of
yeah.
course they're going to continue to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, the kids just want to connect with the parent. More often than not, when a kid is throwing a temper tantrum, it's because they need or want something from their parent and they're not getting it. And if we can attune to someone else's needs, and that is the job of a parent, that is literally their only responsibility to take care of and attune to their kids. It's not the kids' responsibility to attune to their parents, but our parents were raised that way because it was their responsibility to take care and manage their parents' emotion. And now parenting norms and social norms have shifted. And so ways of existing are different. And then you get friction because now you have all the millennials saying to their boomer parents, why are you acting that way? What are you doing? And the boomers are like, I've acted this way since I was 4 years old. This is what I was taught to do. So it's interesting to see the big generational differences. And we are so different. I think this is one of the biggest generational gaps that we have between boomers and millennials. And I feel bad because Gen X always like gets left out because they're either more boomer or more millennial. But this is the biggest gap because of technology and because of how rapidly society started shifting with tech. And now that we have AI, what is society going to be like in 10 years from now? Don't
Yeah.
even want to think about it.
I do think it's like I think a lot of people relate such negativity to that, but I do think there's such intense positivity. I think there's a massive shift happening right now. I just think it's wonderful in so many
It's
ways, and
beautiful.
yeah, and there's a lot of negative associated with it, but it's normally the relationship to technology that is the problem, not the actual technology.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can choose to shift and evolve, or we can fear the change and then stay the same. And when we
Exactly.
fear the change and we stay the same and we avoid, we're unhappy, we're alone, we're just isolated, right? We're
Yeah,
disconnected.
yeah, you put yourself on an island when you fear change normally. Laura Caruso, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This was so
Yeah,
fun.
it was really good. I appreciate you being one of the first people to come on. There is still no name to this. I will figure that out at some
I
point.
was gonna say, do we have like an idea yet?
No, I have a whole list of names that I'm thinking about. But no, I just wanted to go, just put stuff out there. I believe that if I talk to people that think in similar ways, the content will take care of itself and the name doesn't necessarily matter right now.
I agree. The name will also change. My podcast changed 400 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I figure. Okay, I'm gonna stop this recording.